Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me is Professor Pixel, aka Pixel Double, for tonight's movie, the Brian DePalma 1984 erotic thriller Body Double. Professor Pixel is the millennial in our group, the young 20-something that hasn't seen a lot of these things. He's getting introduced to a whole new perspective of what television and what movies mean. And I, being your 1980s kind of guy host here, I got to sit there and say, Pixel, I love Brian DePalma, and the divisive nature of Brian DePalma in and of itself is worth discussing as people start to fill in our stream. Let's start off with this. People who love film, especially all the film snobs out there, really get a hard on for that pervert, that old guy called Alfred Hitchcock, whose films are entertaining, and he certainly has a distinct style. Brian DePalma does as well. And a lot of people like to say, De Palma sucks, bro. He just rips off Hitchcock and takes all their shots. When I'm 13, 14 years old watching this late night on the HBO, I don't give a rat's ass if he stole it script by script. It doesn't matter to me because I have to say, from my initial take, this is an awesome movie. It's one of the best of 1984. He just come off of Scarface, for God's sakes, a phenomenal, incredible movie. And he's got this one here. And I totally am sad that there's no such thing as erotic thrillers, voyeurism, all these little things about it too. And also, if I could be serious for a moment, not only is this a great film, it's friggin' hilarious, and it's like a comedy masterpiece. He's trolling everybody, I think, with this film. It is fantastic, and I love it. That's why we're talking about it tonight. What is your initial take about this movie? Have you ever seen it before? How familiar are you with Palma? Let's start off with the easy stuff.
This was my first time watching. No, I don't think I've ever seen a Brian De Palma film before. I'll be honest. But I wasn't convinced during the first half that this was going to be anything spectacular. Because it just, there are elements that you're like, why am I watching this? What's happening?
It's awesome.
But when things start coming together, that's when everything's great. And what to your point, where people are saying he's just ripping off his style, I'm trying to remember who. Imitation is the
sincerest form of flattery.
Yeah, and at
good
this
artists
point,
great ones steal. I mean, that's another one.
There's no more Hitchcock. Hitchcock's done. He's gone. So if somebody else is using that style, I mean, that's just keeping the spirit of those films alive. But that's beside the point. I'll go ahead and let you start your...
Well, to kind of piggyback on that as we get ready to talk about the opening scene and go through this here a little bit, since I think themes are sometimes more important to talk about than just, you know, scene by scene or whatever and all that. Anybody can read something and talk about it, or if they've seen it. But for me, one of the things as a kid watching this, I remembered, is that I didn't know certain films were like, say, by John Carpenter. I just knew I liked The Fog, or I liked Escape from New York. And I was like, well, this reminds me of that. And as a kid growing up, that was one of the most exciting things, is to get with your friends and talk about what you saw, what scenes you thought were neat and cool. You may not have understood everything that was going on, or maybe some of the references put in, or why they may have been important or funny or not. And to me, nudity on television was hard to see, but you definitely got to see a lot of it in the 80s if you stayed up late and watched movies like this. But it's not about the nudity. But for me, with themes, when I think of this, I just go, I don't think that Alfred Hitchcock necessarily... I think he had to deal with a very hard set of standards back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, to make the movies. I think if he made a movie in the 80s, 90s, the aughts, it would be like this movie, Body Double, because it's certainly sexier, it's certainly grimier, it's certainly more disgusting, and I think Hitchcock would have gone there, but I think he made them just sanitized enough where, even though they're interesting films for the most part, a lot of Hitchcock's films, I like the updated feel of this. There's something greasy and slimy about what's going on here. I mean, after all, we go through half the film kind of like Psycho, where something happens, and then the second half is like kind of totally different than the first. You're like, what? And then we get kind of this absurd thing at the end, and I'm like, okay, I'm buying it. So yeah, to me, this, who cares? We get sick 80s crib, man cave sort of thing this guy gets to be in, and we get interesting shots. We get some really, what I would call, funny shots because they're bad intentionally, and I think that's Brian DePalma saying F you to certain people, but I like it a lot. So let's just dive right in. We see this dude. He's playing like this vampire sort of character or whatever on this sea
Hideous
level.
costuming.
It's a crap film, but
Horrendous.
it's what he's doing. It's what he does for a living. He's not an ugly looking dude, but he's not hot. He's not smoking. You know what I'm saying? He's just sort of there. But he has a panic attack, and we find out that he's claustrophobic. So what's funny to me is Miss Scream Queen, that we have not ever really talked about too much, Barbara Crampton, as his wife. He goes home to his place, and he's actually kind of in a good mood. He's working, he comes home, and you see the pictures of him and his woman that he's walking through and all that. And he's a cute little doggy in one of the rooms barking at him. He's like, shh, I'm surprised my woman. Goes into the bedroom, and she is on top riding the white pony off some dude we don't even see. She giving this look like, oh yeah, you caught me. I mean, and that is it. That is the nature of what's going on. So like a guy that's jilted, he goes to go get shit-faced. And this is where things start to pick up, because along the way, he goes to one of his acting classes where he meets this dude, Sam, and he kind of opens up about an acting scene in here, and it's method acting. I'm not an actor, don't pretend to be one. I do have a very close lifelong friend that actually was in LA doing acting, and he said a lot of what happened in here is par for the course, where you take your acting classes and then you try to go on as many interviews as you can, and you just have to really pound that out and take it seriously, and you can't get too up or down about it. But method acting, you're trying to feel pain and associate it with like some experience you've had. This guy's had a really difficult childhood dealing with something with his like brothers and stuff, so that's why he's claustrophobic. It may not be important, we think, at this point, but it will be major later on, because he lost his job over it already, and he doesn't seem to be a bad dude, right? But when he goes to the bar to get shit-faced or whatever, he's got a guy that will hook him up. He goes to stay at his place or whatever for a little bit, but now we've got a situation. This guy that he knows from acting class, Sam, we see him watching him act, and he's leaning forward. I'm like, oh, he's really into him. And then he gets pissed off and all that. So he kind of says, hey, bro, I'm sorry you're going through this bad time. I can hook you up with a place to stay for a while if you can help me out. I've got to go away for a month or so for a project, but I'm babysitting somebody's house. It's a really rich house, but can you do it for me? If you think you can, let me make some calls. I'll see if I can make it happen. And he goes and he does it. So that's kind of like the initial sort of setup. We don't know exactly everything that's going to happen yet, but it just feels natural to me. They're not too hot. They're not too Hollywoodish or whatever. It just feels like dudes doing their thing, helping each other out. And we've got a setup here. What's your take on all this so far?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Whenever Sam noticed him in the acting class and he pulled him aside and he took him to the bar, he was seeming like he's just a solid guy. He's trying to help a brother out,
Do me a solid.
Yeah. And whenever they finally get to this place, it's really nice. I've never seen anything like it. Jake says, but I have to agree. It looks like, I don't know if you've ever been to Universal, but it looks like one of those towers in front of the Men in Black area. And it's
a flying donut, basically. It looks
Yeah.
like the Seattle Space Needle, and it's on stilts in the Hollywood Hills, and the view inside overlooks everything. I mean, it's like, even by today's standards, I really popped for this. I was like, this is really badass.
Where can I get this house? But no, there's a key moment here, though. Whenever he points out, he's like, there's a bar over here, the bed rotates, there's TV, just make sure you water the plants every day just after 6. And then he says, but look at this, this is the neatest thing. And he leads him to a telescope, and he points it towards a house, and looking through the window, there is this lovely woman. There's just a lovely woman in there, and she is dancing and kind of treating herself. And Jake, at the first moment he was watching, he's like, wow, and then he was like, wow, as Sam is trying to pack up because he has to get out of there. So eventually Sam does leave, and he says that every day she does that at that time, like clockwork.
I think it's
So,
midnight. It's definitely at night, obviously.
yeah, I think it's supposed to be. I don't think it's supposed to be too late, but I don't think it's supposed to be too early. So just a little while after the sun goes down. But over the next day, he goes ahead and he peeks again. And I think I'll go ahead and let you take it from here.
Well, a couple things. This is an average dude as an actor, and you can be friends with rich people or not or what. I mean, the guy doesn't seem like he's removed from, like, say, a situation you or I could be in, right? I mean, he seems relatable. I'm not saying he's somebody we look up to. He's just a dude, but we understand, he's got his wife's fooling around, he's cheating, he needs a place to stay, he's working, but he just got fired, or he's going to get fired here in the scene coming up, whatever. So he's down on his luck. So it's a little positive thing. His buddy's hooking him up or whatever. The whole thing I wanted to say about this film is, when you see the lady dancing around, the way they shoot this, like through the little binocular perspective or whatever, but the single eye focus, she's a very elegant lady, dressed up very classy, rich woman with jewels and all that, maybe 30, just ballpark or whatever, 25, 30, or maybe 35, who knows. But what I like about this film, I mean, it's almost 2 hours long. They don't overdo it, and by today's standards, it may be considered a gratuitous amount of nudity. I certainly don't think so. It's not gratuitous like in a Friday the 13th sense, where it's like, oops, here's my boobs, let me stare at them before I die. This was essential to the whole film, because one of the things I think what DePalma does in this film is he's kind of, I think, making fun of all of us, because as guys, it's like, it's in our genetics, it's in our DNA. You can't help but like take a sneak peek, and it's involuntary. It's nothing you can do. And you got a situation like this where you're watching a beautiful woman doing this very, I would say, elaborate dance to it. She's totally into whatever, if she's listening to music or something, we don't really hear anything, but it's just, it goes on long enough where instead of just saying, okay, I get the point, you're going, now I'm watching it. Now I'm watching what she's doing. And so it's like we almost become a voyeur watching this guy be a voyeur, because it's like, yeah, we would do that. It's not like, okay, yeah, I see her, she's hot, that's cool, blah, 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 maybe I'll run into her the next day. It's very seductive. It's very pro-woman. And I know Brian De Palma gets beat up a lot for, saying he's being a woman hater, and I'm going to dispute that in this film, because here, this woman allegedly is doing it on her own. She's in a Hollywood Hills. She's obviously very rich. She's just doing this very elaborate dance with her 80s style lingerie or whatever. And there's no like dumb crude jokes. There's no getting completely juvenile. They're adult males, but it was an adult male, like a young male, you know what you like. It's just, it can almost make you uncomfortable depending on how you are with those kinds of sexual themes, because she's not doing anything here sexually. I mean, she's dancing and it's erotic. So I think it's kind of tough to sometimes see it, because you do not see stuff like that in films at all these days. That the hint of surprise, an element of sexiness and this kind of stuff is just not prevalent today, especially like in music and everything else. It's just thrown at you. There's none of this in-between kind of area with it too. But I think that's absolutely 100% crucial to what happens here in the movie, because yeah, he's down on his luck, he's feeling sorry for himself, but he's not acting like a loser. But you can tell he's obviously, hey, positive thing kind of happening to me, I guess. Hey, there's nothing else going on, I guess I'll check her out again. And you do. But when he goes to watch her the next night, because he's been drinking and just watching TV and stuff like that, I call it the pimp figure, because the dude's got the hat on, he's got the suit, you can't quite see it, and it's just a zoom up of like their upper body, and you see him slapping her around, the old 80s pimp style slapping and stuff. And you see there's a like a jewel chest in the room as well there too. And then it's pretty much a quick scene. So this guy's intrigue, first it was sexual and we're drawn in, and then it's kind of like, ew, I saw something I maybe shouldn't have seen. Now it's kind of like, and then he gets fired from his
lines
job.
are exactly the same as the night before. Oh my God. Oh my God.
I didn't think of it, but that's true. It's just his delivery, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he gets a call that he's fired, and then he goes to appeal to his boss, and we see a really bad scene going on of a vampire trying to like suck on a woman in the shower going on in the background while he's arguing with the guy that fired him. And it's just kind of absurd, and we'll pause right there because I think the big setup for what's supposed to happen is that whole erotic dance.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you're right. The fact that he got fired on top of everything, he's really feeling down, and all he has left is, hey, what's across the way? But he notices that night, whenever she's doing her dance again, there's somebody working on a satellite from across the way.
At
And
night, it's flashing and flickering, so it looks kind of
Mhm.
neat when you see the scene.
Yeah. And finally, he goes ahead and he looks at the guy who's also now watching her do her dance. And he's a grotesque looking figure. He looks like a freaking orc. And from that moment on, he's kind of creeped out. So the next day, he's driving and he notices coming down from her house is the woman that he's been seeing dancing for the past 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
But down the way, he also notices a figure in a truck. It's the same man from last night who was watching him from the satellite. And now that guy is following her. And so this leads our character, Jake Scully, to follow her as well. More so, follow him to follow her. But he's
Unintentionally
trying to look
stalking her.
he has a bad feeling from the guy, and if I think anybody who looks at somebody who looks like that would feel the same way.
Yeah, the dude's kind of ugly. I mean, and he's got the mirrored glasses on, which is a big 80s thing too.
He looks like an orc from Lord of the Rings. He's monstrous.
Yeah, he's got an aged or weathered look to his face, and she's got the I think it's a cream-colored Mercedes. But yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of an accidental thing. He's having to pause and wait because there's some stuff in the road that some of the landscapers, and this is Beverly Hills, so it's upscale, big time. And they're clearing off stuff, and he sees the guy, follow her, and he goes to follow, like to your point, and they're going shopping somewhere, some high-end place or whatever. But to me, I still, to this day, as a kid, remember when I first saw this film, I wasn't sure what was going on and everything. And we have a lot of this movie where there's actually not a lot of dialogue. It's a film that you just watch. And one of the things Palma does in his films that I really love is he'll have a lot of long, lingering shots with things zooming kind of in and out slowly, not hard crash zooms or whatever. But you have, I don't know if this is Rodeo Drive. I don't think it is. Like, who knows? It's Beverly Hills, but it's kind of like this outdoorish type mall. Here in Central Florida, we have the indoor ones, but it's a very upscale place with levee parks, and it's one huge, long, continuous crane shot, whatever, one take shot where he pulls up, but we'd already see the other guy doing it. She's on the phone talking to somebody, saying, "I need to see you," blah, blah, blah. She has the look of distress on her face. He gets on the phone next to her and turns around and makes like he's talking to somebody and looking. He doesn't see the guy yet, but he knows the guy that's following her is there, ugly guy. But the camera shows us that, hey, on the other side of the phone bank around the corner, the ugly guy is doing the same thing. And then we get this really awesome long, it's not even voyeuristic. This is just basically stalking, for lack of a better term, where he follows her and she's dressed absolutely beautifully in this very elegant outfit. And we see him following her up a few of the outdoor escalators with this one crane shot that actually zooms back from being very, very close, and we see her walk around and you see everything going on. This is just, to me, as a kid, I don't know why I liked it, but it was just so awesome. It was just something fun to watch visually. It was intriguing. It drew me in. I want to see what this guy's going to do. I want to see what's going to happen, because we know there's something not right with this ugly dude perving on this girl, but yet he's perving too. And she's just dressed so classy. She's looking at something in the window. He's trying to make like he's not watching. It's a lingerie shop. She's kind of like fingering the glass, doing window shopping, walks in, and then he watches her. We see the lady in the lingerie shop seeing him, call security on him, but he's so enthralled with watching her. It's like we're kind of almost in his eyes, like we're perverts ourselves watching, because she goes to the lingerie, or to the room to put on the lingerie, which happens to be a pair of panties, and it's kind of like cracked open inadvertently, but you can see her putting it on in the way that that is shot makes us feel like we're the ones standing at the camera watching her in an act that we wouldn't normally see. And that's one of the neat little things about this movie is it's obviously a voyeuristic type movie so far, and there's this element of danger to it. He hasn't spoken to her, so even though she's so hot and so beautiful, she's so far away, and he's standing right close to her, and there's this danger. He's the every guy being drawn into something that he probably shouldn't be, and that would obviously be to a lot of Hitchcock fans a ripoff, so to speak. But we'll pause here, and I'll just simply say this lady that he's following right now, he's enthralled with, she was a Miss USA, absolutely gorgeous, beautiful woman, very stunning in hair too, but she has a very good troubled look on her face. I really like this scene. I think it's awesome up to this point. This movie has a couple of scenes like this, and this is one of the best ones to me. How do you feel about this whole shopping scene, let's call it?
Well, overall, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. It's like we're just following her around. I thought at this point, I knew this film was supposed to be a thriller of some sort. I was thinking maybe he in his own mind is imagining this guy, and he's actually the stalker. He doesn't even realize it. Mm-hmm. But that quickly is disproven by one moment here in the mall. After she goes ahead and she gets changed, we can say, the person at the register calls the security up and says, "There's a guy out here, and he's just staring at this woman. So can you please come over here?" And security guard's on his way, and during this scene, he's just still looking and watching as she's getting out and then going. And then he notices from across the way the guy. And that's just when the security guard is finally by his side and saying, "Can I help you?" He's like, no. And he quickly runs to get to the other side of the building. He makes it there, but for some reason, the guy's gone. But the lady at the register is still giving him the "what the hell are you doing" look.
But when he walks around the corner, what's cool, because the dude was right there, then we see her actually in the same shot walk out right behind him, and he misses her because he's looking for the guy, but then all of a sudden he's right there at street level, whereas before he had the back entrance, which is the beautiful, seductive one, and yet here he is. So it's like we're almost in this dreamy, trancy kind of thing, even though it's in the mall, and then it's out with street level, and then he goes back in and can't see her. So it's neat how visually a lot of this looks, because we see him look around and he's lost them all, except for actually he does think he sees her and continues to chase on. We're like, okay, this is going on again.
He goes back because he notices the guy go down. He's on the bottom floor, and he's rushing to the elevator. So he notices on his level that she is also going to the elevator. So he runs for it, and he manages to make it just in time to press the button and open the door. And so he goes inside, and he doesn't really say anything as it goes to the next floor. Where
it's just those two, the woman he's been following, and he's got claustrophobia, so he's kind of panicking a little bit, and he almost goes to say something and doesn't.
He's not panicking yet. When he starts to panic is when a group full of people fill up the elevator. There's a college-age kids in there, and they all fill up the elevator, and that's when he can't breathe. He's stuck. And it goes to the next floor, it opens up, and it reveals the man.
Yeah,
and
ugly man.
Here is how it proves that my theory at that point was completely wrong. Everybody noticed him. All the college kids are saying, "Oh, look, did you see his face?" Yeah, because he's hideous. But then they go ahead to the bottom floor, and they finally all manage to get out, and he gets out after the lady, and she throws away a bag from the store, and she asks for her car. And I'm going to go ahead and pause there.
Well, one of the things I really like about the scene too is, again, like the voyeuristic scene earlier, it doesn't drag on or move too slow. It's basically like real time almost. So it's beautiful because that's about how much time it would take to do it. And I think it's very crucial to the film. And sometimes there's sequences in here that are almost dreamlike, the way they're filmed and the way they're shot. And that's a big positive because, like I say, makes you feel like you're a part of whatever the little thriller or adventure part is. Because he sees her in a Mercedes, and she's right next to him the way it's shot. It's where they got dropped off, so it's like full circle. And he has the guy go get his car, and he goes to start following her. But he notices as he's waiting for a car, the bag that she dropped off in the trash right there in the receptacle. And he sticks his hand, he looks in there, sticks his hand, and he pulls out. And this is where the guy gets creepy. I have to say it. I'm going to be honest. I don't know if every guy on the planet would do it, but I think every guy would have watched her 3 nights in a row. But it's her panties that she took off to try on the new ones that she ended up buying at the lingerie shop. So he takes her panties. He doesn't sniff them, and everyone's going to think that, but he just puts them in the pocket like it's an afterthought because he's like in a rush to follow her. Because he follows her to the beach, and he's walking behind her or whatever, and we're outdoors. And what I think is absolutely one of probably the prettiest shot in this film, even though I love the mall scene, the way it's filmed, I like the way this looks. This is very Hitchcockian, as people would say. You see this single shot basically of her going to like the 3rd or 4th floor of some place that she had rented out. And it's this really upscale, really small hotel on the beach. I don't know if it's Malibu or whatever, but you see him walking down the flight of stairs and they come up, and it's very colorful. It almost looks like it's on the Mediterranean type. Obviously, it's on California coast. And we just see him go down a little bit while she's up. But then he goes to the beach, looks around, sees her. And it's, again, this dude is just, he's taking it to another level. Not only did he steal her panties, which kind of freaked me out a little bit, now he's walking around the beach huts that are right there looking at her, and you could tell he doesn't know what the hell to do. Should I confront her? Should I not? We don't know. It's real time. And she's distressed. She's making a phone call. He's checking things out. He notices some people on the floor above her are leaving, so he goes to stand up there, and he could literally, like 2 feet below him where he would be standing, listen to her and see her. And again, the way it's shot, you feel like it's not cramped because it feels very expansive, but being a crane shot following him walk up the outside stairs here, it looks like a Spanish type villa thing. He's sitting there listening to her. You go, I can see where you can listen to people and stuff. And I don't know if it's a goof, but when she hangs up the phone, the receiver falls off and she puts it on. And I'm like, okay, that was kind of a neat little everyday thing to leave in. And he still hasn't spoken to her. She still hasn't seen him, but he does see as she grabs her purse, the ugly Indian dude that's got a mesh shirt on, by the way. We have not talked about that in a while. It's not quite a Canadian tuxedo, but he's got a mesh shirt on and the mirrored glass is very 80-ish looking. So the style part of this movie is on point, but he sees her going out to the huts there on the beach, and he sees the guy following her running on the other side, and it's just like a little 4x4 distribution out there on the beach. So he immediately runs out there, and he finally gets the balls and courage to act.
Hey.
Because that's the whole thing, is that he doesn't know how to act with his claustrophobia. That's what we found out from the method thing. I'll pause there. You squealed.
Yeah, well, I said, hey, because that's what he says. He calls out, hey, says someone's following you. And she looks at him and says, I know. And then he's taking a moment and he's like, okay, but it's not me. That's not what I mean. But before he can go on, the ugly man who's been following her runs at the side, just towards her, mad dash, grabs the purse and starts running. So he goes ahead and he chases after him until they get into a tunnel. And they're pretty deep in there when he realizes, oh crap, I'm too far. And he goes against the wall and he's clinging to it. And this gives the ugly guy a chance to take a breath, and he looks at him and he realizes, okay, he's stuck. And he goes through the purse, takes everything out, takes one thing, one card it looks like, and he runs away.
Yeah, he's definitely hit the psychological and physical wall here. And it's a far enough distance where you're like, yeah, okay, whatever, I get it. And this is very Hitchcockian feel to it as well. It's some obscure kind of camera angle here, the way the guys, I think that's supposed to imply how much this guy's claustrophobia is really hit him, because he can't move. He's really, really stuck.
Yeah. And in fact, so much so that whenever he finally struggles his way over there and he picks the things up on the purse, that gives time for the woman to make it there.
Yeah.
And that's when she's like, "Are you okay?" Because she notices how disturbed he looks. He's like, "Yeah, I just a little out of breath. Can you help me out of here?" And so she does, pulls him along towards the exit. And I thought something was going to happen because how he shot it, how it was shot was all the way up towards the exit, the light at the end of the tunnel. And
Literally, yep.
I expected the guy to pop out and do something, but he didn't. And it was just the two of them. And she wants some answers. And he why is he following her? Well, that is partial. That's part of her question anyway. We know why. We understand why, even though he's being a bit of a creep. He is trying to protect her. That's what he's trying to do. But he doesn't say that but slowly and slowly their bodies come together and they are pulled into a long, passionate, a little more than a kiss there on the beach.
This is hot, bro. This is a really hot, sexy scene, man. I'm telling you. I think it's phenomenal.
It's what they were going for. And it doesn't last too long. They do circle around them a few times as they're going around, and eventually she says no, yes, and then kisses again, and then finally she says, "No, I can't do this, and she runs through the tunnel and he can't follow. So
to me, not only is this erotic, because if you think about it from your classic perspective of the roles here, damsel in distress, we know something's bothering her, she knows she's being followed, and when you see some of the way some of the shots are filmed, like a minute before, with the way she's holding her purse, obviously we know it's a movie and it's staged, but the way it's filmed is ugly guy who darts across in one full motion, just grabs her purse and takes off. I'm like going, okay, is this a drop off? Is she a part of something big? Is it the classic, oh, my husband's been kidnapped, I have to meet the ransom people and draw, stupid stuff like that. It almost gives you this vibe that there's something that's bothering her and we don't know what it is. Because we don't know about her husband, obviously, rich because of the house she's in and the jewels that we saw and that she's putting on. And it's intriguing because even when she dropped her package off after buying the panties, for a moment there, I thought, okay, maybe there's money or drugs or something in the pocket. I honestly didn't think it was panties. I'm like, oh, the dude's going to take her panties. That's sick, but he didn't do it like, oh, her panties. It was like, okay, I've got her panties, what's going on here? It was almost like an afterthought. And here he does retrieve her goods, and even though he was watching her, she had said, hey, you've been following me, but she didn't say it like you're creeping me out, but like she wants answers. So it seems like she understands on some innate level that this guy's not really a bad dude, but he has been following her. What's up? And it's almost like, and women are going to hate the way this sounds, that she's thanking him for saving her in a purse or whatever like that, because he's like, I don't know, maybe they got some stuff, because they have this wild and passionate erotic embrace. Then the other party goes, the cynical adult goes, no, she's just a whore, she's just a slut, she's just doing this or like that, she's into something bad. You can't trust a woman that's like this. But she's overwhelmed with desire, and they're about ready to bone right then and there, and at the last minute she can't. And it's kind of like the guy getting blue balls in a way too. Hey, I saved you, I've been creeping on you, I can't admit to some of these things, otherwise you'll never have sex with me. And it was so close to happening. But it's hot, it's erotic, it's steamy. But here's the thing too, I think this is a funny scene, because we saw when he was driving a little bit some really obviously horrible, we're talking like 1960-ish or 50-ish or even 40-ish level back screen while he's driving scenes like you would see in a Hitchcock film, or people driving cars, and you see it here. And while they're twirling around, the back of it's obviously not the beach, well, where it's supposed to be filmed. It's obviously like a set thing, and it is done so cheesy that that DePalma's going, F you guys, I'm saying screw you to everybody thinks I'm ripping off Hitchcock or whatever. Here, let me troll you with some Hitchcock type scenes in here. So it's funny, you get the hot erotic moment, then they're spinning around, and then they pause for a moment, do it again, and it's like, okay. About halfway through this film, and we've seen a peeping Tom, and we've seen like this ugly dude acting, whatever. We've seen like a pimp in the house or whatever, and it's pretty cool. I'm liking it so far. I'm loving it.
Yeah. It at this point though, I wasn't sure where we were going until, well, the night.
But were you intrigued?
I had some level of intrigue at this point, yes.
Okay.
During the entire opening, I was like going through this. Now it's okay, what's happening? And there's a clear difference between the two.
Right.
But that night comes, and
what's a divorce? What's a soon-to-be divorced guy who's been cheated on?
Well, he's not going to be divorced.
Well,
the guy's not married. He wasn't married. It was
his girlfriend. You're correct. Okay,
yeah.
Dumped guy, blah blah blah. And this now, what's a guy going to do on night 4 after a day's worth of excitement? He's going to spy on her some more.
Yeah, and in fact, whenever he was home, he was thinking about calling and saying, "Hey, it's me. It's Jake, the guy who almost banged you on the beach."
Yeah.
And then he realizes that's not a good line. But he doesn't get a lot of time to think it over, because he looks over and he sees the woman, Gloria, down there waiting with it looks like to be a police officer. The officer goes inside and she's talking, and at that moment he goes ahead and he looks at the top level to see, and he ultimately he does notice somebody's there, and it is this warped man. And while down there, they finish their conversation. The officer leaves and drives away. He can't believe this. It's almost like he's watching a movie. And this guy, he's stealing her jewels, and that's when she goes up and she's starting to change, and the guy hasn't gotten near her yet. In fact, she steps into her bedroom and the guy sneaks behind the door, and he's like, "Oh shit," because he's scared for her.
It's that night. It's a quiet scene, and it's in shadow mostly, but her room is so big, the dude's got places to hide. And again, the way it's like you're looking at it through the telescope, that the guy's watching all this unfold, and he's powerless to really do anything at this point. He's trying to, like you say, get into the safe, get the jewels. He's got the big the industrial drill that he's got with him there that uses 2 hands, however, in a curvy point, and it goes back and forth. So these two are going to meet. She's got this beautiful big dog with her too that doesn't seem to realize there's an intruder in a house. So yeah, this is starting to get tight. I mean, every time we see her in her house, things escalate.
Yeah, and finally it gets to the point where he decides, okay, I'm going to try to call her. And so he enters the number, calls the place, and it's ringing. He's like, pick up. And he's watching. And the guy, because she turns on the light, the Indian, so he's called, is in the corner of the room. And he's hunched over, so that way he's not in eye level view. And she just goes over to the phone, picks it up, and he starts saying, "There's a man behind you. Hurry, move, quick." But there's not enough time before the Indian grabs the phone, wraps the cord around her neck, and starts choking her out. And so we see the struggle, and ultimately she gets knocked out, but not before knocking the Indian out, because the phone hits him.
It does. It's kind of funny.
It is.
He falls on top of her, or the other way around.
Yeah, she's on top of him, and they're on the bed. Ultimately, that's when Scully is now running towards the house. And she quickly is getting out of there, and she's trying to collect herself, and she tries to call 911, but she can't before the Indian is getting up and takes this massive drill that he's brought with him to break into the vault, I imagine, and starts going after her. she gets into this one in the corner, in fact, that he was hiding, and she's against the wall, and slowly we're being led as he's taking the drill, and we notice the cord, it's starting to come up a little short. And ultimately, right before he goes for the stab, the cord is pulled, and he's like, oh.
That is tremendous. That is funny.
And that's when she tries to run away, but she trips over the edge of the bed, hits the floor, and that's when the Indian plugs it in. And Scully, finally getting the alert of some joggers to come with him, saying, there's a woman being murdered in this house. We gotta hurry. He runs, breaks a window. Her dog attacks him.
This is also funny to me, too. The dog does what's supposed to, mauls the shit out of him.
And up above, we see as the drill goes down, she's screaming no, but through the ceiling, we see the drill come out with blood just gushing down. And it's too late.
It's awesome. It is an awesome, awesome scene. I remember people, like as a kid, you don't know what's too much, or because you haven't seen a lot of films and you don't know late night, you can't talk about it with your parents, right? So you talk about it with the other kids and what you saw. And there's definitely a lot of violence and gore and sex in movies in the 70s and 80s late night. And this particular shot, upon rewatching it, where she's laying down, you can't quite see her. And the shot is basically the ugly guy we've been saying, that we're calling him the Indian now because they
call him the Indian.
Right, so the Indian guy. He's the one, looks like he's been breaking in or whatever, scoping the place out. I guess he, is following around, realized, oh, she's a rich woman, and they go rip her off. But we see it's basically an ass shot of him, and it's zoomed in from his ass cheeks to like the floor, and you don't even see her at all. And you see the drill going between his legs straight down, and it's about as phallic as you can without whipping it out. I mean, and everything too. I mean, it's I don't know if you want to call it exploitative or not or what. But the thing is, this is like the Psycho shower scene. You don't really see the thing going into her, even though it's implied, because the guy's on his back on the first floor with the lights are on, and he's looking up at the ceiling. The dog's mauling at him, and the drill tips going through with the blood coming out a couple times. That is awesome. I mean, I'm telling you, that is Psycho, for the 80s instead of the 50s. It's awesome. It's phenomenal. But people freaked out about this back in the day, saying it was really horrific. And even the joggers that followed him in there before the detective starts questioning him and finding out he's kind of a perv, they're not able to help. But we're more than halfway through the movie, and kind of like Psycho, going back to that again, where the lady's killed off, a third, halfway through the film or whatever. And I think this is a turning point in this film that we'll discuss here in the second half. So what was your take on the drill scene here that you mentioned and the scene with the detective afterwards?
I mean, it really did captivate my interest at that point, because I guess it was leading up to this all along, and because you can tell by the way he does it, he is there for this reason. It's just from the joy that he takes from making this move, how he's been watching her, and it's totally different from how Scully's been watching her.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, though, it's a good thing he grabbed those joggers. I'm going to say that, because there is whenever the scene is brought to with the police at the scene and they're taking the body, there is a detective, Jim McLean, and
no relation to John, by the way, people, for the 80s.
Oh, yes, but he quickly is suspicious of Scully, but he has the joggers there to be a witness for him, pretty much, saying that he was rushing there to try to save her. I expected the turn to be that, they're ultimately going to say that he had the time to go up there and drill into her, and but that's not the angle they go to, because he's let go, saying that he can't arrest him, but he's going to be waiting because he was peeping on her. He was this entire time. And in his pocket, he notices the panties that he stole. And he understands how it's starting to look now. But there's nothing he can do. So he does ultimately go home. And he is just watching porn on there's no way to allude to it.
No, and porn is a very big part of this movie, as we're about to find out.
And as he's watching the channel, he sees he sees a commercial for Holly Does Hollywood, starring Holly Body, which
and he's on the bed. Remember, the bed's spinning around, and he's drinking himself.
Yep.
Senseless.
And
he's probably rubbed the couple out too.
And as he's watching, there's a moment in this commercial for Holly Does Body that he notices Holly Body dancing. Yes. And not in just, oh, she's showing what she's got. No, it's the exact same dance that he's been seeing for the past 4 nights. So he wants to meet this woman. So how does he do it? He tries to get into the porn industry. And I'm going to stop there, let my voice take rest. And you take it.
Well, the only thing about this is, like I said, this movie to me is a comedy, but I don't think when you watch it, sometimes you see those things, especially if you're getting enthralled in like the erotic nature of some of the scenes, or like we have a really great kill scene here with the drill bit going through the ceiling. It's awesome. But yeah, the guy's obviously kind of despondent and all that too. But the thing I wanted to point out that made me kind of laugh a little bit here was the porn. Porn obviously is widely available. No matter what you want, it's out there. I don't advocate one way or the other for it. If that's your thing, that's fine. You know, we're all adults. But back in the 80s, it was a lot harder to come by. Magazines, the late night stuff, the rules, the regulations, and we're talking, 35, 40 years ago. So when you would have late night movies or infomercials or the skin mags and stuff like that, there was more of the culture of it. It wasn't as watered down as it is today, where everybody can, take their phone and go somewhere, film something, and say that, they're an adult actor or actress or whatever. A lot of actors did start off in softcore porn or erotic porn or porn in general before they made it big, and that's just the reality of it. So this guy does what he's supposed to do. He's an actor. He's like, I don't know what's going on, but this exact same, like you said, dance routine that he saw in the window that he was peeping on, he's got. So he doesn't know why, and he doesn't know what the hell is going on, but damn it, she died, and he's got to go figure it out. And you're right about meeting the 2 joggers too, I was going to say, because the cop knows this guy's innocent, but he's still busting his ass because the dude's a creep. So he's going to get somebody for something, and if he can't find a murderer, he's probably going to arrest this guy for being a peeping Tom, let him talk or whatever like that. So it's not quite like American Juggalo with Richard Gere, where he was actually caught up in a murder thing where he was the lead suspect. He isn't here, but it's not really a factor in the movie. But sex and death and all that kind of go together. So is it a murder mystery? Is it a satire? Is it an erotic thriller? It's a bunch of these things here, because now when he sees this, the actual television commercial for Hollywood Does Hollywood, I think, it's funny, and it's kind of like how porn was back then. Porn in the 80s tried to be mainstream in the sense that when you would go to an adult store or the adult section in a store, which there was not very many of them, even in a big town like we're here in Central Florida, if you went to that back room, they were made as like 60 to 90 minute movies. And yeah, there were shorts and all that, but they weren't 10-minute clips that you'd find on the internet or whatever. So they had these lavish, lots of saxophone and other types of thing in it. And so these ladies in this ad and the older dude with it is so 80s porn. It's funny to me watching it. At least that's what I've heard, because I don't know about that. But
sure you don't.
No, I don't. I'm a red-blooded American male, and I'm just simply saying times are a little different, but porn is porn. But the intriguing thing here is, to your point, he sees this totally different woman, blonde hair. It's Melanie Griffith, a younger one, very tight, thin bod, dancer's kind of bod, dancing exactly like he saw this woman. And it's too detailed of a dance routine for it to be random or lucky or similar or close. It is move for move the exact same thing. So yeah, we have a death of this beautiful, gorgeous woman that we never got to know, yet now we're still involved in figuring out something about her, going deeper in here, which I think is, it's cool. Like I said, we're halfway through here. So he goes into this porn blockbuster-ish type place there. And of course, the way this is shot, a lot of people never had, the younger people had the experience of maybe being like in a blockbuster. And a blockbuster was the commercialized, watered down version of everything. Way back in the day, they were mom and pop things. So only certain places would carry certain things. And of course, the adult movies did very, very well. They actually pretty much solidified the VHS format rather than Betamax or anything else at the time. So this guy goes down here, and now all of a sudden we go from being in a Beverly Hills sick man cave, cribs, outer space, alien looking spaceship type house to him being an unemployed actor trying to go into adult movies, because he goes and he finds out this movie, tries to find out who this chick is, and he's watching it, and he goes to interview. And even the interview process is funny because it's in this really seedy place, and he sees the guy that's the producer, says, okay, let's read, stand over there. Oh, I make you hot. How does that work for you? I like to watch, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what the fuck? Because it's such a jarring change from woman getting drilled through the ceiling to this guy sitting here who's supposed to be a really high level actor finding his way through stuff. And he's doing this like, I like to watch. And he's like, all right, take your clothes off. Let's see. Okay.
That's
and
the
he
most
gets the
important
role.
part of the interview process.
It is true. It is true. Can you look at, but what people pop about this movie for, because it's totally probably unnecessary. And again, I love the fact that I think DePalma's saying screw you to everybody. This is no 90-minute movie. He basically has Frankie Goes to Hollywood's relax in here, and that's like a quote unquote part of the film. And we see him dressed up with glasses and this guy walking down, and the song is going on, and you're like, this is exactly what I meant by 80s adult films. For the most part had either really bad plot, or they were this the slush thing too, especially like Vivid Video with Tori Wells and a bunch of others at the time. And this guy comes in, he's got the glasses, he's got the dorky sweater on and pants and all that, and he's the nerd in this sinful type of sex house or whatever, and he goes into the sluts room in the back, and he's watching everything, and the music's playing, and you see all types of perversions going on. And he goes into the room, says his line to Holly Body, the one that he saw that was doing the exact same dance, because she's obviously the one he's trying to research. And they do their little thing and they start kissing, but it comes to an abrupt end because they're both performing their scenes so well. But I guess he didn't realize, or they didn't bother to inform that, no, you're supposed to whip it out and finish on her face with a money shot or a body shot, because he just, creams his pants literally or whatever. But they're both actually kind of enjoying it. It's like, okay, here's the business side of it or whatever. It's really kind of campy and exploitive, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a turn.
Again, it's funny to me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, it's porn. It's like, yeah, that's the whole point. He's making fun of it.
Well, you said 80s porn was remembered for having bad plot. Are you saying the plots have gotten better? But
no,
anyway.
It's just what I'm saying. Anything you see now is just a few clicks on the keyboard and you have everything at your fingertips. Back then, it was considered more of like film. I mean, you tried to have porn going into certain places in the 70s and 80s, and it found its home on VHS. I mean, and that's where Playboy pretty much and all the magazines started their eventual slow decline. But hey, the lead lady that just died in here, Deborah Shelton, the beautiful woman, she was Miss USA. She was in Playboy in the early 70s. She's a knockout. She's a stunner.
Yeah, no. I'm just giving you a little shit. I'm just shooting on you a little bit.
Well, porn today is all about what we talk about with social media. It's not about, and I'm only half joking here, it's not about the quality of the content or the type. It's really about engagement, quick turns, and everything else there too. You don't have 90-minute pieces of porn being made like you did back then. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough. But back to the movie, not the adult movie, this movie.
Yes.
So after they've finished their scene, he goes to her room and asks if he can take her for a drink. He has a proposition to make.
Do you remember how he's dressed though when he sees her?
Well, now he has he has a jacket on, his hair slicked back. He's trying to look like a porn producer.
He is.
And so he says that he wants to hire her. And she's like, okay, but I have some demands. And he's like, yeah. Anything you want. And so he's leading her back to his place. We return to the UFO house, and he offers to get her a drink, and she says he'll take a tall glass of Jake Scully. So she's trying to come on to him, but that's when he's trying to get to business. He's saying, no, wait. Were you in that house? I've been watching for days, and I think it's been you in there. I saw you dancing. I saw that routine. So were you in that house? Ultimately, she admits, yeah, she was hired to be in that house. And he's like, I knew it. And at that point, anything that was going to happen isn't going to happen now. She is collecting her things, and she's ready to get out of there. And he is trying to keep her there, saying, no, we need to go to the police. I figured this all out. But he can't stop her. She leaves. And so he calls the police to talk to Detective McLean. And this is where the plot is revealed. Mm-hmm. And this made everything worth it.
Go ahead. Take it away.
He reveals that Sam is not actually Sam, whatever his last name was. He was Gloria Ravel's husband. And so he had this plot in mind. He heard there at the acting class how things have been going, and knew he needed a place to stay, knew he was down on his luck. So he wanted to hire Scully for the part of the witness. And so he ultimately does eventually murder her. And as this Indian man, I don't think at that point he figured out that Sam was the Indian.
No, not yet.
Which I just
not
revealed,
yet.
But you know,
Damn it.
I had a feeling it was
point.
him as soon as they revealed it. But Scully is saying this is really him being set up. It is all Sam, or whatever his real name is, Mr. Ravel. And so this is just him being an alibi. And at that moment, the detective isn't convinced. Not really. He's saying, this sounds crazy. You sound like a conspiracy nut. And he says, I know how it sounds, but it's the truth. And ultimately, the detective says, fine, I think you should come down to the station. We'll get this all settled. And Scully makes his way. And all during that moment, we see Holly Body trying to get a ride. Hey, stop! Come on! Can't you give a lady a ride here? And she is ultimately picked up by a creepy guy that we know, the Indian. And so as he's driving down, there is a car crash that Holly Body might have accidentally caused. And so they are stopped. And that's when he notices the car that the Indian was driving and Holly in the front seat. The Indian lifts up like this crowbar and hits her across the head. And the stupid police officer's telling him to stop freaking out because he's trying to tell him about what's happening in front of him. But ultimately, he breaks free of the officer and he's chasing after the Indian. And do you want to take up the wrap up here?
Well, what I liked here was that we didn't quite know exactly what was happening here, but we knew like him, we were onto something, and so we're along with the ride too. And there's the fact that he was so enthralled with the woman, he was missing the bigger picture about what was going on. We were too, and that takes you through, like I say, the first half of this film. But he says it in such a way where it doesn't come across as being a dipshit to the detective, because as he's doing it, we're getting we get a quick second flashback of a scene or two where you're like, oh, this makes sense. This completely makes sense. And works, and you're like, holy shit, why didn't I see this? It's so obvious. And I don't know if people feel like it's a trick ending. I certainly don't. I don't put up there with the Shyamalan's Sixth Sense or whatever. Some people go, oh, once you know the ending, it sucks. Well, no, the whole point was you didn't, and nobody did. But it makes sense in terms of a thriller because, okay, we've had the erotic part, we've had a little bit of adventure, I guess, but he goes to basically chase them down. They get stopped with the cops, and the bad dude runs to the reservoir. And again, this is at night or whatever, and he goes after them. And what I liked about this last little scene here, too, though, is despite the fact the police aren't able to capture him or whatever, he goes to, and this is probably overdone, but I don't care. I like it. Here at the end, you see where the ugly Indian is digging a grave, and he's getting ready to pour her body into it, and he's sneaking up behind the car or whatever. And then you hear a dog barking, and it's her dog. This big, beautiful white dog. I can't tell what it is. It's not a shepherd, I don't think, but it's something like that. And what's neat about this scene here is as the guy's digging in, it's night, and he goes up to him. The dog, or him and the guy struggle. And while he's struggling, he rips, he's got his hand on the guy's face because they're struggling, and he rips off a piece of, yes, just like if you're listening to our Twin Peaks review, you find out that Toji Mura might not be Toji Mura because the face rips off because it's really a mask, and it's the guy, like you said, Sam, that we had met that befriended him earlier on. So Sam is really the Indian, but he's not really Sam. He's pretending to be Sam because this person is actually the abusive husband of the hot lady that got murdered. And he, like to your point, was looking to set up an alibi, and this is the way he went about doing it. Smart, it was creative, it works. You're not sure who's ribbing who with it all, but he goes through this little bit of psychological trauma as he falls into the grave, and she's in there or whatever. But then, he kind of gets the strength to act out of it, which is a flashback to the earlier scene when Sam was watching him in method acting class. So he gets out of there. The dog breaks through the glass of the car, comes out, goes to maul the dude, and knocks him off into the reservoir, which had been great if the dog lived, but looked like the dog went with the body into the reservoir, which disappointed me. But, it would explain why the dog didn't attack him when he was watching him, because he knows that's his master, so it's not a stranger in the house. So you could argue that point, and we could argue certain other little plot points, convenience of certain timing things and all that, but it does seem to all piece together here enough where he ends up getting his job back, and then there's a rolling credit scene, which kind of is a joke on the movie industry and all that from the very beginning. Scene like comes full circle too. What were you gonna say?
Well, the thing that I really like about the moment right there is that he's in the grave, and and Sam's starting to bury him and saying, well, you got to act it out. If you want to do something, you got to act. And he is pulled out of reality a moment because it flashes back to the first scene where he was playing the vampire. They pull him out of there. He all right, that's a wrap. Cut. And it takes him out, and he finally says, no, I'm going to do the scene. Let me go back in. And the director tells him, all right, but this is your last chance. There's no more takes after this. And we're brought back to reality. And he grabs the shovel, and that's when the struggle begins. The dog comes out and knocks him down. Yeah. And that's when Holly Body wakes up. And he is about to help her out of the hole, but she is not having it. She thinks he's a nut, that he's a necrophiliac now. The only problem is I'm still moving, isn't it?
It's absurd.
And at the end of this, he's just so tired. He's like, are you just going to stay there for the rest of your life? And that's ultimately where the movie ends, with it pulling up. Except for the credit shot, because the credits reveal that he got his job back. Holly Body's still sticking around. And it seems that his life is coming together.
Yeah, he's back to being that Billy Idol vampire type, and he just goes to town. And a very gratuitous scene of him just constantly rubbing this girl's boobs until he like bites her on the neck or whatever. And I mean, it's awesome. I mean,
That was a
you're like,
little gratuitous.
and we can appreciate that because that in itself is kind of funny too. But it's like I said about this movie, I love Brian De Palma. Made so many great movies. I like his style. You could talk about being a ripoff. Who cares? And frankly, even if this film has a few meta things about it, you don't have to be a film snob or a cinema buff to kind of find those things and go, oh, this is just like Vertigo. This is just like whatever. Because here's the bottom line. I was never a fan of Jimmy Stewart, and a lot of people are. Okay, and when you go back and you think of, was it Rear Window, where he's got the broken leg and he's got what's her name in it? What's that?
I said Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah, it's like he got away with being a creep in that one because he had a broken leg and he's Jimmy Stewart. So it's okay if Jimmy Stewart could be in a Hitchcock film, and Hitchcock was a perv himself, big time too. It's okay for Jimmy Stewart to have a broken leg and be in a wheelchair because he's got Grace Kelly or whoever with being his girlfriend, even though he's about 30 years older than her, which again, I don't care, but it's okay if that happens in here and that's acceptable. But you get a guy in here whose probably only big mistake was, inadvertently grabbing a pair of panties and holding on to them. I mean, other than that, you're like, which camp do you fall in? The Jimmy Stewart one where you're going to be full of yourself, or this one here, you're like everyday dude who kind of seems like he goes through this whirlwind thing and gets a porn star girlfriend. I mean, I don't know. I don't know which one's the happier ending, Grace Kelly or porn star. It's hard to say, but I still think this movie's very good. It's very funny, but if you're just watching it, it definitely, I think it's aged well. I didn't know what I would think when I rewatched it because it's gotten a lot of grief over the years, and it's a movie that could not be made today, and that's disappointing to me. It deals with themes that as adults we're all used to, as men that we're all used to. I think it portrays women in a very positive light, and it's like, well, how can you say that when this lady is getting stalked and her panties are getting stolen, and then she gets killed by a drill in a very phallic type of situation? Well, Melanie Griffith's character is very self-assured. She's very strong. She takes her work seriously. She's very independent and all that, and it works. And this guy's a bit of a dweeb. I mean, let's be honest, he is, but he's like an everyday average guy that just gets caught up in something bigger, which, we can kind of relate to a little bit. But no, I think it's a clever movie. I think it's fun. I think it's very Brian De Palma-y, despite everything else that he's made. I mean, come on, Scarface, you just came off of that from this. Are you kidding me? He directed that. It's just a lot of great visual stuff in here. It's definitely, I think, a film worth watching, especially if you love that kind of artistry and also if you love the 80s. Fantastic film. Again, wish there'd be more erotic thrillers out there by people that felt like they at least seemed to understand the subject matter, and Brian De Palma nailed it in this one. Fantastic film. I think it's in my top 10 of 1984 when we cover those here on the Xtreme Movie Show. What are your final thoughts, sir?
I enjoyed the film ultimately. It was better than I was expecting with the opening, how it was. But I'm glad I watched it.
That's not something you would have watched on your own, is it?
No, never. If it hadn't been for us doing it here, probably would have never seen it.
Yeah, that's why we do what we do here on the Xtreme Movie Show, 80s-based channel here on YouTube where we cover things, some TV, mostly trying that out a little bit, but definitely 80s-based action primarily, but we cover sci-fi, horror, you name it, and everything too. And I feel that the genres of movies in the 80s that existed don't really exist now because everything's like a comic book movie, or which is most of them are crap, or they're check marks, all the boxes of what people consider important today in terms of filmmaking. And I just wonder if we're ever going to get to a point where we can go back to just making films and being entertaining and having a vision with something. And unfortunately, we don't see that too much, but that's why I like to explore some of the old, some of the new, and see what we have here on the Xtreme Movie Show. Checking out some of the comments here, we had Jim. I said he hasn't seen it since Blockbuster. We got Johnny talking about how he hasn't seen it or heard about it. And it's a shame because Brian De Palma, while I believe he's still alive today, it's been a while, I think, since he's made a movie, a couple years at least. It's when he dies, this will be, I think, a film that'll get talked about a lot, as well as many of his others. He's definitely considered one of the better filmmakers out there. Divisive, because he does like erotic thrillers, and then he does some other type of movies too. A lot of people I know love Snake Eyes with Nick Cage. A lot of people didn't like that film, but he has a very long striking shot in the beginning of that. So it's just awesome when you see styles of things and you get drawn into what they are, and then you realize, oh, I can watch this in this film or that. That's the beauty of it. And unfortunately, you don't really get a lot of that today. So Pixel, thanks for coming out tonight, checking out, especially being the millennium man, the young guy that you are, not having seen this at all, or even really heard about it. Pretty pleased that you're able to give some great feedback on it too. I think it's neat. Jim's mentioned about a thriller with Anthony Perkins and Kathleen Turner. Kathleen Turner, I'm thinking Body Heat, but I don't think that's Anthony Perkins. So I'm getting those crossed there, but I have to check that out, Jim. Yeah, Jim, one thing we haven't done too much on here is thrillers, because we try to do something that all of us may be interested in watching, or at least have a desire to see. So definitely check that out. Kathleen Turner is an actress who very sultry, very seductive. She's definitely been in some erotic stuff. She's also been in stuff like Romancing the Stone, which is a very popular movie. 84 is a killer year for movies, phenomenal year. So I imagine at some point we're going to be talking about Kathleen Turner pretty soon. Anthony Perkins, obviously Psycho and some other things too. Definitely going to be talking about it. And Deborah Shelton, who played in here, again, Miss USA. She was in Playboy. You even had Barbara Crampton. Quick scene, but she's a screen queen. She's been in a lot of things for a long time too. She's still active on Twitter and everything on the scene. So she's not just a one person pony. She's been around, and very memorable scene, especially for a young man singing it too. But lots of good stuff out there too. The 80s are just a great decade, and we'll be sure to cover some more for that. So guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. As always, have a good night. Stay extreme, and remember, relax.
Double it.
Good night.